The great chamber of the Galactic Council was silent. The walls glowed with soft golden light, and giant banners of each alien race hung from the ceiling. Every seat was filled with leaders from across the stars. Reptilian warlords, insectoid queens, feathered diplomats, and beings made of light. They had gathered for one purpose: to decide the fate of one small blue planet called Earth. At the center of the round table, a giant hologram floated in the air, showing Earth slowly turning in the blackness of space. From far away, it looked harmless. To most alien eyes, it was nothing special. A simple planet with oceans, mountains, and clouds. But the Council knew the truth. Humanity had changed the balance of the galaxy before they were even part of it. The High Speaker, an old alien with long silver tendrils, looked around the chamber. His voice was deep and slow. "We have all seen the reports. The humans expand too quickly. They adapt to every danger. They win wars they should not win. If we let them grow, they will one day rule us all." A low murmur spread through the chamber. Some council members nodded in agreement. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One member, a tall bird-like alien from the Zeri species, leaned forward. "High Speaker, perhaps you exaggerate. They are only one species. They have no great fleets, no vast empire." The High Speaker's silver eyes flashed. "Not yet, but they are dangerous because they learn. They are dangerous because they never stop." Another council member, a scarred reptilian general, slammed his clawed hand on the table. "Enough talk. I have fought humans before, on the mining colonies near Vega. They were outnumbered, outgunned. Yet they still drove us back. They fought like nothing I have seen. Even when we destroyed their ships, they kept fighting on the ground. They don't know when to die." A smaller alien, no taller than a child, spoke in a voice that echoed strangely. "I have read their history. They have fought wars on their own world for thousands of years. Empires have risen and fallen. Each time they come back stronger. They are not like us. They are not afraid of pain." The chamber grew tense. The High Speaker raised his hands for silence. "This is not about fear. This is about survival. We must act before it is too late. If we wait, they will be too strong to defeat. I call for a vote." One by one, glowing panels lit up in front of each council member. "War against humanity, yes or no?" The chamber fell into deep silence. Again. Somewhere, in the upper levels, the sound of the great star clock echoed, counting each moment. Then, one by one, the panels began to glow red for yes. A few glowed blue for no, but the majority turned red. The decision was made. The Council had declared war on humanity. The High Speaker's voice was final. "The fleets will be assembled. The humans will be crushed before they can rise." Across the galaxy, messengers and signals were sent. In the great shipyards of the Council races, warships began to awaken. Massive cruisers hummed with energy. Thousands of fighters were prepared. Generals and admirals smiled with confidence. This would be easy, they thought. The humans had no vast fleet, no planet-killing weapons. The war would be quick. The humans would surrender, and the galaxy would be safe. But far away, in a quiet corner of space, a small listening station near Mars picked up the Council's transmission. Inside the station, 3 human officers stared at the decoded message. It was simple and clear. The Galactic Council declares total war on the Human Federation. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Commander Elias Black slowly smiled. So, they finally made their move. He turned to his second officer, a young woman named Lieutenant Carter. "Send word to command. Use Omega Protocol." Her eyes widened. "Omega Protocol? Sir, that means—" Elias nodded. I know what it means. Do it. On Earth, deep beneath the mountains, massive steel doors began to open. Inside hidden hangars, ships that had never been seen by alien eyes powered up. They were black, sharp, and silent. Nothing like the public human navy the galaxy knew. Engineers and soldiers moved quickly, as if they had been waiting for this moment for years. In orbit around Jupiter, a huge station rotated slowly. Inside, a man in a dark uniform stood in front of a holographic map of the galaxy. His face was calm, but his voice carried power. The Council has made their choice. Now they will see what we have kept hidden. Back in the Council chamber, the members congratulated each other. They believed they had saved the galaxy from a future threat. None of them knew they had just lit the spark for a fire they could never control. The war they imagined would be quick and clean was about to become something far darker. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy would see what humanity was truly capable of. And when they did, they would remember this day, the day the Council made their final mistake. In the deep black of space, far beyond the last human colony, a massive shape moved slowly. It was larger than any known warship, its surface covered in strange black armor that seemed to swallow light. No signal came from it, no beacon announced its presence. But its engines were already burning, heading toward the heart of Council territory. The humans had not just prepared for war. They had been waiting for it. The alien armada entered the solar system with the confidence of predators hunting prey. They came in waves, sleek silver cruisers from the Valari, massive armored battleships from the Dracoth, and elegant needle-like carriers from the Zeri. All of them flew under the banner of the Galactic Council, their mission clear: crush Earth before humanity could respond. Each admiral expected a short campaign, a victory that would prove the Council's wisdom. They thought they would find human fleets rushing to defend their homeworld, desperate and unorganized. But when they arrived, space was empty. Too empty. The planets drifted silently in their orbits, the moons hung like cold stones, and no human ships came to meet them. Admiral Zhuroth of the Dracoth leaned forward in his command chair, his reptilian eyes narrowing. "Where is their defense fleet?" he demanded. His bridge crew scanned every direction, but the scanners showed nothing. No ships, no stations, no movement at all. "Perhaps they have already fled," said a Valari captain on the comlink. His tone carried amusement. But Zhuroth's instincts told him something was wrong. No prey fled without leaving signs, and humans were not the kind to run without a fight. The first task force moved toward Mars, aiming to seize its colonies. Their ships passed the red planet without resistance, their landing craft ready to descend. Then, without warning, the lead cruiser simply vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. No explosion, no debris, just empty space. The fleet halted in confusion. "Check sensors," barked the Valari captain. "We may have a cloaked enemy nearby," but the scans showed nothing, just the silence of space. Minutes later, another ship vanished. Then another. Panic began to ripple through the fleet. Messages flew between commanders, each demanding answers. But the truth was stranger than they could imagine. Something was hunting them, something unseen, silent, and impossibly fast. Admiral Zhuroth ordered all ships into defensive formation. They spread out, covering each other, weapons armed. But the disappearances continued. A battleship on the fleet's edge flickered on sensors for a moment, then vanished in a bright distortion of light. Survivor reports later claimed they saw a shadow, massive, black, and shaped like no ship they knew, before their comrades were gone. Across the solar system, the second wave of the Council's invasion reached Jupiter. They planned to take its massive shipyards, believing it was one of humanity's strongest naval bases. But when they arrived, the station was dark. No lights, no ships, no signs of life. They drew closer, The station lit up in sudden bursts, dozens of energy spikes, each locking onto a different alien ship. "Incoming fire!" shouted a Zeri officer. The next instant, invisible projectiles slammed into the fleet. The impacts were silent in space, but devastating. Ships were sliced apart, their hulls torn like paper. Some exploded instantly, others drifted, their crews lost. One Zeri carrier tried to retreat, engines blazing, but from the shadows of Jupiter's rings, a massive black shape emerged. Its surface was jagged, swallowing all light around it. It fired once, a single shot that tore the carrier in half. The alien crew didn't even have time to scream. The strange ship then faded back into the shadows, as if it had never been there. Back near Earth, the third wave of the Council fleet approached cautiously. They had heard fragments of distress, calls from the other waves, reports of phantom ships and vanishing cruisers. But their commanders dismissed these as panic and hallucination. They believed discipline would win the day. As they reached Earth's orbit, they saw nothing unusual. No fleets, no stations, just the blue and white planet below. "Prepare to broadcast surrender demands," ordered their admiral. But before the words left his mouth, the entire fleet's systems flickered. Lights dimmed, shields failed, weapons went offline. Then they saw them. Dozens of massive human warships appeared. From thin air, their hulls black as the void, their outlines sharp and menacing. They surrounded the alien fleet in perfect silence. No one spoke on the human channels, no threats were issued, no demands made. The aliens' sensors showed no energy readings from the human ships, as if they were dead hulks, but their presence was undeniable. The alien admiral hesitated, unsure whether to fire or retreat. That hesitation was fatal. The human ships moved as one, unleashing a storm of weapons that lit up space. The alien fleet was shredded in minutes. Some ships tried to run, but the humans were faster. They cut down the fleeing ships with precision fire until only a handful of damaged vessels remained. Then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, the human warships vanished. Only the wreckage and a few crippled alien ships remained. The surviving aliens, terrified and broken, fled the system at maximum speed. They didn't know what they had just faced. They only knew one thing. This was not the human fleet they had been told about. This was something else, something hidden and deadly. Hours later, in the hidden command center deep beneath Earth's surface, Commander Elias Black watched the battle recordings with cold satisfaction. "They came expecting surrender," he said quietly. Instead, they met the Shadow Fleet. Beside him, Lieutenant Carter asked, "Do we pursue the survivors?" Black shook his head. "No. Let them run. Let them tell their leaders what they saw. Fear will do half our work for us." Far across the stars, the surviving alien ships limped back to Council space, carrying tales of impossible warships, silent attacks, and entire fleets vanishing without a trace. The Council leaders listened but refused to believe. They called the survivors cowards, their reports exaggerated. But in the corners of the galaxy, whispers began to spread, whispers that humanity had been hiding its true strength all along, and those whispers carried a warning. This war would not be easy. It would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever faced. The Council's war room was filled with angry voices. Admirals and generals from every species shouted over one another, each trying to explain how their fleets had been destroyed in the solar system. The high speaker slammed his hand on the table, the sound echoing through the chamber. "Enough," he growled. "You speak of ghosts and shadows as if they are real. You were defeated because you underestimated them." But deep down, even he felt the unease. No one could explain the recordings from the survivors. The massive black ships that appeared from nowhere, the way they vanished as if swallowed by the void, the way they destroyed fleets in minutes without a single human casualty. The official council reports tried to dismiss them as sensor malfunctions and panic, but the whispers spreading through the galaxy told another story. They spoke of a hidden human fleet, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They called it by a name that would soon strike fear everywhere: the Shadow Fleet. In a darkened chamber on the far side of the moon, the leaders of the Human Federation met in secret. The room was built deep into the lunar rock, protected by layers of armor and hidden from every kind of scan. Commander Elias Black stood at the head of the table, a holographic map of the galaxy glowing before him. The red marks showed Council fleets moving toward human space. The green marks were human forces, small, scattered, and intentionally visible to alien spies. They were a distraction. The real human strength was not marked at all. Elias spoke calmly, but with authority. The Council believes they have seen our defenses. They believe we are weak. This is exactly what we want them to believe. Around the table, senior officers nodded. One of them, Admiral Reeves, leaned forward. The Shadow Fleet has been in hiding for decades. We built it for this moment. Every ship, every weapon, every piece of technology is beyond what they understand. Elias allowed himself a faint smile. And now, they have finally given us the excuse to use it. Far away, hidden in the cold edges of the solar system, the Shadow Fleet gathered. The ships were monstrous in size, their black armor absorbing every trace of light. They had no standard design. Some were shaped like jagged blades, others like massive floating fortresses. Every surface bristled with weapons no alien had ever encountered. They emitted no signals, no engine trails, nothing that could be tracked by conventional means. They were invisible until they chose not to be. Their crews were the best humanity had, trained in total secrecy since birth. They had studied every alien strategy, every council tactic, and they knew exactly how to break them. The flagship of the Shadow Fleet was the Erebus, a colossal warship so vast that it could carry smaller destroyers within its hull. It was commanded by Captain Aria Vance, a woman with eyes as sharp as her mind. She stood on the bridge, gazing at the holographic display of the enemy's next moves. "The Council will not stop after one defeat," she said. "They will come again in greater numbers and we will be ready." Her voice was calm, but every officer on the bridge felt the electric tension in the air. They knew that once the Erebus moved into action, there would be no turning back. Meanwhile, in Council space, a small Zeri scout ship floated in the darkness. Its crew had been sent to confirm whether the human reports were true. They expected to find nothing, perhaps a few hidden ships, maybe a small base, but what they saw instead froze their blood. In the distance, a massive black shape emerged from the shadow of an asteroid. It moved with slow, deliberate power, its sheer size dwarfing anything the scout had seen before. The Zeri captain ordered the ship to turn back immediately, but before they could escape, the shadow moved faster than anything so large should move. In seconds, the human warship was, alongside them, silent and looming. Then, without firing a shot, it vanished into nothingness. The Zeri crew was left trembling, unsure whether they had just been spared or marked for death. The scout returned to the Council with its report. The captain's voice shook as he described the encounter, but the Council again refused to believe. "A trick," they said, "an illusion," but behind closed doors, some of them began to worry. Back in the hidden lunar base, Elias received the scout's intercepted transmission. "Good," he murmured. "Let them doubt, let them argue. The more divided they are, the easier our work becomes." He turned to his communications officer. "Signal the Erebus. Begin Phase 2. The officer nodded and transmitted the order in a tight beam burst that no alien could intercept. Days later, the Council sent another fleet toward human space, larger than before, commanded by their most experienced admirals. But this time, they would not even reach the solar system. As they crossed the outer edges of the Oort cloud, space itself seemed to twist around them. One by one, human warships emerged from the blackness, surrounding the fleet before they even knew they were under attack. The Shadow Fleet struck without warning, using weapons that bypassed shields and tore through armor as if it were paper. The battle was over in less than 15 minutes. Not a single human ship was lost. Captain Arya Vance stood on the bridge of the Erebus, watching the last alien ship. "Break apart. Leave a few survivors," she ordered. "They will tell the story for us." Her second officer frowned. "Won't that give the Council a chance to adapt?" Arya shook her head. "No, they cannot adapt to what they cannot understand." The survivors fled, carrying with them fresh tales of the terrifying black ships that appeared from nowhere and vanished without trace. They spoke of weapons that killed without sound, of ships so fast and agile they seemed to defy the laws of physics. The whispers of the Shadow Fleet spread faster than the Council could silence them. In distant worlds, alien civilians began to ask questions their leaders could not answer. In the Council chamber, the High Speaker listened to the new reports in grim silence. His silver eyes no longer held certainty. The humans were not fighting with the fleet the Council knew about. They had something else, something built in secret, something designed for one purpose: total, unstoppable war. And though he would never admit it aloud, he began to wonder if the Council had already lost. The cold void around Saturn was quiet except for the slow orbit of its moons. Titan, the largest of them, hung like a golden sphere against the darkness. Beneath its thick orange clouds lay human research stations, mining facilities, and hidden military outposts. Unknown to the Council, Titan was not just a colony. It was one of humanity's key strategic strongholds, and it was here that the next great battle of the war would begin. The Council's largest fleet to date emerged from hyperspace in a shimmering cascade of light. Hundreds of ships, from sleek frigates to monstrous dreadnoughts, formed into formation. The armada stretched across space, bristling with weapons and confidence. Admiral Sorn of the Valari Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Sunspike, gazing at the rings of Saturn with cold determination. He had been given a simple order: destroy Titan, crush all human resistance in the outer system, and prove that the Council's power was absolute. His strategy was simple and brutal. The fleet would sweep through the moon's defenses, bombard the surface until nothing remained, and move on to Earth itself. There would be no drawn-out siege, no opportunity for humans to regroup. But as the armada advanced toward Titan, something felt wrong. Sensors showed no human warships in the area, no patrols, no stations powered for defense. It looked abandoned. Sorn's second-in-command frowned. "It's too quiet," he muttered. Sorn ignored him. "They are afraid. They know we are here." He raised his hand. "All ships, advance." The fleet closed in, weapons charging, when suddenly the darkness around them shifted. Shadows moved across the stars, blotting out distant points of light. Ships emerged from the blackness. Dozens at first, then hundreds. They were unlike anything in the Council's databases. Massive, angular, and completely black, their surfaces drinking in all light. The Shadow Fleet had arrived. They moved with terrifying precision, encircling the Council armada before anyone could react. Admiral Sorn's voice cracked as he shouted for firing orders. The Council ships opened fire, lancing beams of plasma and streams of missiles toward the human vessels. But the black ships were fast, far faster than their size suggested. They weaved between the incoming fire, their own weapons still silent. It was as if they were waiting for something. Confusion spread through the alien fleet. Then the human flagship appeared. The Erebus emerged from the darkness like a phantom, its colossal frame dwarfing even the largest Council dreadnoughts. Its hull was jagged and irregular, as though it had been built to intimidate as much as to destroy. Captain Arya Vance stood on its bridge, watching the enemy's frantic maneuvers. "Hold," she ordered. The Shadow Fleet maintained its silent formation, letting the Council waste ammunition and energy in a blind assault. Then, with a single word from Arya, they struck. The darkness erupted with light. Human weapons tore through the Council fleet with surgical precision. Energy lances punched through shields as if they were nothing, slicing alien ships in half. Gravity warheads detonated in controlled bursts, crushing vessels into twisted wreckage. Microwave pulses fried enemy systems, leaving ships drifting helplessly before being obliterated. The Council's formations collapsed almost instantly. Admiral Sorn's commands turned into desperate calls for retreat, but there was nowhere to go. The Shadow Fleet was everywhere, blocking every escape path. Some Council ships tried to hide among Saturn's rings, but human drones swept through the ice and rock like hunting wolves, flushing them out and delivering fatal strikes. Others made a break for open space, only to be chased down by faster, smaller human corvettes that ripped them apart with railgun fire. With each passing minute, the battle became less a fight and more a slaughter. The Erebus targeted the Sunspike directly. Arya's voice was cold as she gave the order. "Disable their weapons first. Make them watch." Precision strikes tore the Valari flagship's gun arrays from its hull, leaving it defenseless. Then the Erebus unleashed a single massive beam that carved through the ship's spine. Admiral Sorn stood frozen on his bridge as the Sunspike split. Apart, the light of Titan reflecting in his eyes before everything went dark. Within 20 minutes, the greatest fleet the Council had ever assembled was gone. The debris field stretched for thousands of kilometers, lit only by the faint glow of burning wreckage. Survivor counts were minimal, by design. Captain Vance ordered a handful of crippled alien ships to be allowed to limp away, carrying the message of what had happened here. She knew fear would spread, faster than any weapon. On Titan's surface, human soldiers and civilians watched the spectacle from beneath the thick atmosphere, hearing the distant rumble of orbital weapons through the planet's crust. They knew the war had changed. They had seen the Shadow Fleet fight in full power for the first time, and win without hesitation or mercy. Far away, in the hidden human Command Center beneath Earth's mountains, Commander Elias Black received the battle report. He studied the casualty list on the human side. It was almost non-existent. "Good," he said quietly. "They thought this would be our end. Now no, it's only the beginning." His communications officer asked, "Do we strike deeper into their territory now?" Elias shook his head. "Not yet. We will let them gather themselves, let them try again. The more they commit, the more we destroy, and when they are broken, we will take everything." In Council space, the news hit like a storm. Entire worlds mourned. Fleets that had never returned. Families demanded answers, but the Council could offer none. The whispers of the Shadow Fleet became shouts, and fear began to erode the unity of the alien alliance. For the first time since the war began, the High Speaker felt a shadow over his own heart, a cold certainty that they were fighting an enemy beyond their understanding. And in the darkness between the stars, the Shadow Fleet prepared for the next move. The ruins of the Battle of Titan still drifted in the cold void, shattered metal and lifeless hulls scattering across Saturn's rings. The Council's proudest fleet, once thought invincible, was now nothing more than silent wreckage. But among the debris, a handful of alien ships limped away, their hulls scorched and engines sputtering. They carried no victory reports, only fear, and the memory of black ships that struck like ghosts and vanished like smoke. These survivors were allowed to escape for a reason, though none of them knew it yet. On the bridge of the Erebus, Captain Arya Vance stood with her arms crossed, watching the last council vessel disappear into hyperspace. "They will run home," she said quietly, "and when they arrive, they will speak of what they saw." Her first officer frowned. "And if the council calls them liars?" Arya's lips curved into a cold smile. "Then we will make sure they receive proof they cannot deny." She turned to her communications chief. "Prepare the message. Transmit on every known council frequency. Across the galaxy, in every military command center, on every major world, and aboard every warship flying the council's banner, communication systems flickered without warning. Screens turned black, and for a moment there was only static. Then a figure appeared. Human, tall, and dressed in a black uniform without insignia. Their face was shadowed, their voice calm but carrying the weight of certainty. "You started this," the voice said, each word deliberate. "You came to our home, expecting to crush us. You sent fleets, thinking we would kneel. You believed your numbers, your weapons, and your pride would be enough. You were wrong. We are humanity. We do not run. We do not hide. We do not break. And now, we will finish what you began." The figure leaned forward slightly, their eyes glinting in the half-light. "Tell your council, tell your leaders, tell every world under your control. This war will not end with your victory. It will not end with peace. It will end when your fleets are gone, your worlds stand empty, and your banners are ash in the wind. We are coming." The transmission ended, leaving silence in its wake. But before the screens returned to normal, a single symbol burned into every display. A black warship, its jagged outline etched against a dying star. The image lingered for several seconds before vanishing. The reaction across the Council's worlds was immediate. Some dismissed it as a human bluff, an attempt to intimidate after a lucky victory, but those who had survived the Shadow Fleet's attacks knew better. They recognized the voice, the precision, and the confidence of a power that had nothing to fear. Civilian markets crashed, military enlistments dropped, and whispers of surrender began to spread in the lower levels of alien society. In the council chamber, the High Speaker replayed the message again and again. His advisors argued about whether to respond, but he said nothing. His silver eyes were fixed on the image of the black warship. He had seen many enemies in his long career, but none had spoken with such certainty. None had declared war on the council and actually made him believe they could win. He finally turned to his generals. "Send the Third Grand Armada. Every ship, every weapon we have in reserve. I want them to burn the human homeworld to ash." But even as the council prepared its next offensive, cracks were beginning to show within their alliance. Some member races questioned the wisdom of continuing the war against an enemy they could not even track, let alone defeat. Secret meetings were held between alien leaders, exploring the possibility of peace, but always in whispers, always in the shadows. The High Speaker's pride would never allow negotiation, not yet. Meanwhile, deep beneath Earth's surface, in the hidden command center known as Bastion Prime, Commander Elias Black watched intercepted council transmissions with a satisfied expression. "They're panicking," he said. "Good. Panic makes them reckless. Reckless enemies make mistakes." Admiral Reeves nodded. "The Third Grand Armada will be their biggest move yet." Elias leaned forward. "And their last." In the far reaches of human-controlled space, the Shadow Fleet began to assemble again, not in secret this time, but in full view of every council spy that still dared to watch. Massive dreadnoughts, black as night, aligned in perfect formation alongside destroyers, cruisers, and carriers. No effort was made to hide them. Humanity wanted the council to know what was coming. The message had been sent in words. Now it would be sent in action. On the bridge of the Erebus, Captain Vance received her orders. "Phase 3 is authorized," came Elias Black's voice over the secure channel. "Draw them in. Destroy them completely. No survivors this time." Her eyes narrowed as she gave the order to set course for the edge of Council space. "It's time," she said to her crew, "to show them what full power really looks like." Back in Council space, the survivors of Titan's battle told their stories again and again. They spoke of impossible human ships that turned battles into slaughter, of weapons that bypassed shields, of tactics so precise they seemed inhuman. And now, with the message burned into every mind in the galaxy, the fear was no longer confined to the soldiers. It had reached the civilians, the politicians, the merchants. Everyone now knew the truth. Humanity was not just fighting to survive. They were fighting to dominate. And they were winning. The Council had wanted to make an example of humanity. Now humanity would make an example of the Council. The message had been sent. The war was no longer about defense. It was about total control, and the Shadow Fleet was already on its way. The human fleet was now moving like a shadow through the cold dark of space, and every alien eye was searching for them, yet none could find a trace. Rumors had begun to spread in the galaxy, whispered in panic, ships destroyed in seconds, planets falling silent without a warning, fleets vanishing as if swallowed by the void. The Council's admirals were growing restless, demanding answers, but no scout ever returned. It was as if the humans could see every move before it happened. Captain Ralvek of the Vath Dominion, a warrior with 50 years of victories, was given a special mission: find the humans and destroy them. He left with a fleet of 50 warships, confident in his strength. But when his ships entered the Archon Nebula, they received a strange transmission. It was a human voice, calm and cold, saying only, "We were watching you long before you came here." Before Ralvek could respond, his sensors went black, his ships lost navigation, and the void outside twisted like a nightmare. In a single, blinding flash, 20 of his ships were gone, ripped apart without any warning. The survivors panicked, firing in all directions, but their weapons hit nothing. Then, in the swirling mist of the nebula, shapes emerged. Black warships, their hulls absorbing every trace of light, moving with a silence that felt unnatural. Ralvek's crew froze in horror as one massive ship passed so close they could see strange symbols carved into its armor, glowing faintly like the eyes of a predator. The human voice spoke again. "We warned the Council. They did not listen. Now, they will watch you fall." Ralvek ordered an immediate retreat, but the humans didn't chase. They simply vanished back into the mist, leaving half his fleet destroyed in minutes. When he finally limped back to the Council's stronghold, his report was met with disbelief and fear. Some leaders refused to accept his story, calling it impossible, while others began to realize the humans were not just another enemy. They were something far worse. Meanwhile, in the far edges of the galaxy, the human fleet continued its silent advance, choosing its next target with cold precision. They had a plan, and they would not stop until the Council understood the full meaning of their mistake. And as the stars shifted above a dozen alien homeworlds, hidden human ships waited in the darkness, their weapons ready, their captains patient. The Council thought they were at war. Humanity knew it was already over. The Council chamber was no longer a place of control and confidence, but a fortress of fear. Leaders who once spoke with arrogance now whispered to one another, their voices sharp with panic. Reports kept arriving, mining colonies gone silent, trade routes collapsing, fleets disappearing without any distress calls. The alien races that once made up the backbone of the Council's power were losing faith, some even abandoning their alliances to hide in deep space. The humans had not attacked in large numbers, yet the damage they caused was devastating. It was clear this was not a random war. It was a deliberate, calculated dismantling of the Council's strength. Admiral Sevek, one of the oldest military minds in the galaxy, stood before the Council and demanded they change their tactics. "We cannot fight them where they choose. We must draw them to us, force them into open battle." His plan was to set a trap, a massive fleet stationed near the industrial system of Ketharis, baiting the humans to attack. The council agreed reluctantly, knowing this might be their last chance. Soon, over 200 warships from every council race gathered in Ketharis space, forming an impenetrable wall of firepower. Every gun, missile, and shield was ready. Days passed with no sign of the enemy. Then, without warning, a single human ship appeared on the edge of the system. It didn't move. It didn't fire. It simply hovered in the dark like a shadow that didn't belong. The council commanders assumed it was a scout, but when they moved to intercept, the human ship transmitted a single message. "You brought this upon yourselves." Before the fleet could respond, the sky ripped open. It wasn't an explosion. It was a breach, a tear in space itself, and from it poured dozens of massive black warships. They moved in perfect silence, their weapons already charging. The trap had failed because the humans had known about it from the beginning. In the first minute, council ships exploded like sparks in a storm. The humans did not fight like the council. They didn't trade fire or hold formation. They struck with speed and precision, vanishing into cloaked positions before returning for the next kill. Communication channels were flooded with screams, distress calls, and desperate orders. Admiral Sivek tried to regroup, but his command ship was split in half by a single blinding shot from a human capital vessel. Within 15 minutes, the council fleet was in ruins, ships scattering in every direction. The humans didn't pursue, all of them. They let some flee, knowing the survivors would carry stories of terror back to the council worlds. As the last human warship vanished into the void, the wreckage of the council's might drifted in silence. In that silence, one truth began to spread across the galaxy. The council could not win. Humanity wasn't just fighting for victory. They were teaching a lesson, and the lesson had only just begun. The council worlds were drowning in fear and uncertainty. The defeat at Ketharis had broken the illusion of their power, and every surviving fleet commander returned with the same story. Human warships that moved like shadows and struck with the force of dying suns. The political halls that once echoed with speeches of dominance now trembled under the weight of silence. The people were restless, markets collapsing, alliances fracturing. Some species began secretly reaching out to humanity in hopes of negotiating peace, but those messages were met with only one chilling reply. "We will decide when this ends." In the deepest chambers of the council headquarters, a meeting took place in absolute secrecy. No records, no witnesses, only the most powerful leaders of the remaining member worlds gathered around a massive holographic table. The debate was heated. Some demanded surrender. Others called for an even larger fleet to be built. But one voice, a cold and calculating strategist named Velcor, spoke above the chaos. He revealed intelligence reports claiming that humanity's fleets were not infinite, and that their logistics depended on hidden supply worlds. If those worlds could be found and destroyed, perhaps the humans could be forced into retreat. It was a desperate plan, but desperation was all they had left. A stealth reconnaissance armada was formed, made up of the fastest and most advanced spy ships the Council still possessed. They would scour the edges of known space for any trace of these human strongholds. For weeks they searched the darkness, slipping between asteroid belts and nebulae, avoiding every known human patrol. Then one day they found something, a faint energy signature hidden within a collapsing star system, shielded by layers of radiation and debris. At first they thought it was a trap, but scans revealed vast orbital structures, manufacturing rings, and docking yards large enough to service the massive black warships. This was it, the heart of humanity's supply chain. The news sparked a surge of hope within the Council. Strike force was assembled in record time, over 100 capital ships, escorted by smaller destroyers and bombers, all equipped with the latest weapons designed specifically to pierce human armor. They launched under the cover of silence, slipping into the hidden system like predators in the dark. What they found when they arrived was not what they expected. The human station was heavily fortified, its defense grid already active as if it had been waiting for them. No warning shots, no negotiations. The station's guns unleashed a storm of fire. The first wave of Council bombers was annihilated before they even reached firing range. Then the black warships emerged from the shadow of the star itself, each one larger than the Council's most advanced battleships. They moved in perfect coordination, cutting through the attackers with surgical precision. The Council fleet fought with everything they had, desperation fueling their assault, but it was like trying to hold back a tidal wave with bare hands. In less than 20 minutes, the once mighty strike force was nothing but burning wreckage drifting through the radiation clouds. As the last Council ship tried to flee, a human transmission cut through the static. It was a calm voice, a woman's voice that carried neither rage nor mercy. She said, "You have found one of our lesser stations. We have many more. And now you have given us a reason to finish this." Then the transmission ended and the human fleet turned away, letting the survivors escape once again. This was not mercy. It was a message. When the survivors returned to the Council with their tale, even the most stubborn leaders understood the truth. There would be no secret victory, no hidden strike that could cripple humanity. Humans were not just prepared for war, they were shaping the war to their design. And the Council's role in that design was to be dismantled, one system at a time, until nothing remained. The galaxy was now a place of whispers and shadows, where every star system feared the sudden arrival of the black human warships. Council territory was shrinking at a terrifying pace, entire sectors abandoned, without a fight because defending them meant certain annihilation. Worlds that had been loyal to the Council for centuries now sent desperate envoys to Earth, begging for protection or at least neutrality, but humanity's response was always the same. They offered nothing, only silence, as if the pleas of alien civilizations were beneath notice. The war had become one-sided beyond belief. Human fleets did not simply conquer worlds. They dismantled them with surgical precision, removing military power, industries, and communication hubs while leaving the population alive but isolated, cut off from the rest of the galaxy. The psychological effect was devastating. Planets would wake to find their skies filled with massive dark shapes blotting out the stars, only for those shapes to vanish hours later, leaving a crippled world behind. The Council tried one last, desperate measure. They gathered what remained of their unified military, 300 warships from across dozens of species, armed with experimental weapons powered by unstable energy cores. They named it the Iron Shield Armada and declared it the final wall between civilization and total human dominance. The plan was to lure a major human fleet into a trap at the edge of the Darus Expanse, a region of space filled with gravitational anomalies. They would pretend to abandon a valuable system, leaving bait in the form of a heavily fortified station and false intelligence pointing to hidden Council leaders being present. The humans took the bait, or so it seemed. A massive formation of black warships emerged from the dark, sliding into attack range without hesitation. The trap was sprung. Gravity fields snapped into place, locking the human fleet in a web of unstable spacetime, and the Iron Shield Armada unleashed its full firepower. For a few moments it looked as if the impossible was happening. Human ships were taking damage, some shields failing under the relentless barrage. But then the humans adapted. Their ships began to move in ways no Council strategist had predicted, using the gravitational anomalies. Not as obstacles, but as weapons. They slingshotted around deadly currents of spacetime, redirecting incoming fire toward Council vessels, turning the battlefield itself into a trap for their enemies. The Iron Shield Armada began to crumble. Ships collided, others were dragged into black holes or torn apart by tidal forces. In less than Half an hour the proud armada was gone, its wreckage scattered like ash across the void. The few survivors limped away, carrying the knowledge that they had not even been close to victory. And then the most chilling part came. Not a single human ship pursued them. The Black Fleet simply withdrew as if they had made their point and no longer saw the Council as a threat. When news of the Iron Shield's destruction reached the galaxy, it was not met with outrage or determination, but with resignation. The war was over, even if no treaty had been signed. Humans now controlled the pace of everything. They could appear anywhere, at any time, and no force could stand against them. The Council still met in its great chamber, but its authority was a hollow shell, its decisions irrelevant in a galaxy where one species now held the power to decide the fate of worlds. The stars belonged to humanity, and the rest of the galaxy could only wait in fearful silence for whatever would come next. The galaxy had grown eerily quiet in the weeks after the destruction of the Iron Shield Armada. No massive battles erupted, no fleets clashed in the cold void, and yet the fear of humanity only deepened. The silence was not peace. It was the silence of prey hiding from a predator, too afraid to move. The Council's remaining intelligence networks tried desperately to locate the main human command, but every lead ended in confusion. The humans did not seem to have a central stronghold that could be attacked or even threatened. Instead, their fleets moved like ghosts, appearing in distant sectors and vanishing before anyone could mount a defense. Their technology remained a mystery. Wreckage from human ships was almost impossible to recover. And when fragments were found, they seemed to dissolve into dust within days, as if designed to prevent reverse engineering. Worlds that had once mocked Earth now fortified themselves not to resist, but to signal surrender at the first sign of human presence. It was in this tense atmosphere that rumors began spreading of a single immense human warship, larger than anything seen before, that had been spotted drifting silently at the edge of uncharted space. Some claimed it was a mobile command center. Others said it was a weapon capable of destroying entire star systems in one strike. The Council at first dismissed these stories as superstition, fabricated by frightened traders, but then long-range probes picked up undeniable readings. Massive energy spikes from a single vessel unlike anything in recorded history. A secret meeting was held among what remained of the Council's high command. The debate was bitter. Some argued for an immediate attempt at diplomacy before humanity decided to use this weapon, while others insisted on assembling every remaining warship for a final desperate strike before it could be deployed. In the end, they chose both. A fleet would shadow the warship from a distance while envoys were sent to Earth with pleas for negotiation. But the humans ignored the envoys, and the shadowing fleet soon learned why. No matter how far they stayed back, the massive ship always seemed aware of them, adjusting its course in ways that made pursuit impossible. Finally, one reckless commander ordered his vessels to close the distance and gather detailed scans. That was the last anyone heard from them. The warship did not fire a single shot. Instead, it emitted a pulse of unknown energy, and the pursuing fleet simply vanished from all sensors, leaving only empty space where dozens of ships had been. The event shattered the last fragments of resistance within the Council. They now knew humanity was operating on a level of technology so advanced it could erase entire fleets without conventional weapons. Civilizations began withdrawing entirely from contested space, ceding whole sectors to human control without a fight. In the shadows, human fleets moved methodically, not conquering in the traditional sense, but shaping the galaxy's borders to their will. No one understood their ultimate goal, but everyone knew. They were moving towards something, some endgame only they could see. The rumors about the massive warship grew with each passing day, some whispering that it was not a ship at all, but a living construct, an intelligence older than the galaxy itself, now bound to humanity's cause. The Council no longer asked whether they could defeat Earth. The only question was how long they had before whatever the humans were preparing for finally unfolded. And in that waiting, in that unbroken silence, the galaxy realized that it was no longer a place of many powers and rival empires. It was a human galaxy now, and the rest of the stars could only endure whatever came next.